Shana Tova. I grew up in Shaker Heights, Ohio, a suburb of Cleveland, where I attended Fernway Elementary School. Several times a year, a multiracial club of high school students called the Student Group on Race Relations would come into our classes to talk about race. As a child, I just assumed everyone talked about race growing up, and everyone had friends of different racial backgrounds. I assumed that this was the status quo. However, as I advanced academically through middle school, I noticed that my classes began to be populated predominantly by white students, while the less advanced classes were filled predominantly by students who were Black. A product of racially biased tracking, I would learn. Given that we were spending less and less time together, we began to self-segregate. I vividly remember hearing the O.J. Simpson verdict. The Black kids were sitting in one section of the cafeteria cheering, and the white kids were sitting in another section sighing. Growing in my awareness of our world, I realized something was wrong with the status quo. By high school, there were only a handful of Black students taking AP classes with me and my white friends. I remember approaching Shaker Heights High School. It's this beautiful two-story red brick building with two big wings and a center door. As I approached, I always used the main or north doors, never the south door. You see, white kids use the north door, and Black kids use the south door. That's just the way it was. The child ideal that I had remembered had shifted dramatically. A segregated learning environment and even a segregated school had become the status quo. That's the thing about a status quo. It's an existing situation, and usually we just live with it and accept it. However, when a status quo is inequitable or even causes harm, we are obligated to work to change it. Once I asked one of the vice principals at Shaker High, a woman of color, why our school was so racially segregated. She responded by saying it was less about race and more about socioeconomics. She, like many others, equated Shaker Heights with wealth. And it's true that Shaker's median income is well above the nation's. Nearly 10% of Shaker residents live below the poverty line and still do today. We now know, of course, that socioeconomics is a symptom of systemic racism, not the cause of the status quo. Growing up in Shaker, I learned not to accept inequitable or harmful status quos. It wasn't good enough for my grandparents' generation, who self-integrated the schools in the 60s before they were forced to by the federal government. It wasn't good enough for my parents' generation, who helped form these biracial relationships and groups to help foster future generations. And it isn't good enough for my generation, who are now working with the administration to end bias tracking in the schools and create equitable education for all students. When the status quo needs to be changed, we work to change it. We work to end a system where there are Black doors and there are white doors. Tonight, as we listen to Kenny beautifully chant Kol Nidre, we reckon with our past promises that we are unable to keep despite our best efforts. Through the words of Kol Nidre, we pray that we will try our best next year and ask God in advance to forgive us if and when we miss the mark. We never achieve all of our goals or promises all of the time, even when we promise to do so, but we never stop trying. Kippur, as in Yom Kippur, means atonement, which is the act of repairing harm in our world. Maimonides, a medieval sage, teaches that transgressions between two people, for example, he lists, someone who injures or curses another, steals from them or the like, will never be forgiven until they repay the person they harmed what they owe them and appease them, give them what they require and ask for and need. Maimonides teaches that we learn to repair the world by learning from those who have been wronged, not simply assuming that what we think is best is for them. To make atonement for unintentional or intentional harm, we must work with those people in order to engage in what we call teshuvah, repentance. As I reflect on my experience at Shaker Heights High, I'm proud of the incredible education I received and the doors that Shaker opened for me. But Shaker didn't open doors for everyone. And as an adult, I've been on a journey to understand what led to this status quo. I learned about how the effect of Jim Crow laws, redlining, racist policing, and internal racial bias continued long after the civil rights movement ended. I learned about the historical and modern racism in our country, and I have sought ways to create more equity for people of color through my work as a rabbi. I've spoken at rallies, protests, worked to reform the Hamden Police Commission where I used to live in Connecticut, created monthly racial justice education programs in my previous conversation, and as part of an interfaith community organizing coalition in Connecticut representing over 25 faith communities, helped pass the Clean Slate Law that expunges the records for nonviolent crimes after someone has served their time, allowing them to fully return back to society. These actions and more are what I attempt to do to repair the harm caused by systemic racism. They are my process of tshuva. Tshuva is the process by which we return shuv to be the best versions of ourselves, both as individuals, communities, and as a society. Yom Kippur doesn't need to be a solemn day. It can be an incredible celebration of hope if, and only if, we engage in the work of atonement throughout our year. On Yom Kippur, we declare that we will not wait for miracles to occur. Rather, we will be the miracles that people need in our world. Miracles in our own lives and miracles in the lives of others. That is the promise we make tonight, knowing that if we try our best and we still don't accomplish all of our goals, we will be forgiven. Famous Jewish proverb that I grew up singing and dancing to at summer camp teaches, it is not our job to complete the work, but neither are we free to not try. And we must try knowing that Kenny will be here again next year singing Kol Nidre beautifully, and Jan, we hope as well. So how do we begin to repair the world? Maimonides suggests that we atone by engaging in tzedakah. Tzedakah means charity, which we often think about as we bring tzedakah to religious school and family school, for example. But it's giving of both our time and money. Tzedakah means acts of justice. And through acts of justice, what we commonly today call social justice, we can transform our world for the better, repair harm that we or others have caused, and fill our world with hope. We can choose not to accept the status quo. Our Sukkot Shalom community continues to challenge the status quo and engage in acts of justice. We give to resources and causes important to us, such as bringing our bags of food for the Ark Food Pantry, and we dedicate our time to helping others. Throughout the summer, I have heard powerful stories about the impact we have had in our community. Currently led by Rachel White, our social justice team continues to engage in several essential products. We cook and serve food at Connections for the Homeless twice a month. We house families in our sacred building as part of Family Promise, and we help settle refugees of violence and war as our neighbors here on the North Shore. For 3 years, we have helped settle 2 families and continue to help them navigate an unfamiliar landscape. This past summer, Gail Newscable, a member of our refugee resettlement team, helped a current family from the Central African Republic navigate school orientation for their 3 and 6-year-old children. I remember school orientation as a parent. I was so excited to learn, what is this school going to be? But this experience only revealed the further challenges that refugee parents face. As Gail recounted, during their tour of the assigned school, the school did not provide a French interpreter. So Gail used Google Translate as they walked and translated into French for the father. as he translated into the local language that they used to speak, Falfute, for the mother and her boys. At lunch, they received a welcome packet for the 3-year-old son who would soon be starting school. Only after they translated did the parents learn and were shocked and upset to hear that their boys would not be attending the same school, even though preschool would be available there. And further, they had no way to effectively communicate with school administrators. So Gail and our refugee team worked with the school, and the boys started school together 2 weeks ago. Gail and the rest of our refugee team transform individual lives by giving of their time and compassion. And we could use more people on our refugee resettlement team to help drive people to doctor's appointments, to help be an advocate, and more in the coming year, and I hope that you will choose to join us. Social justice is not tangential to our mission and values. It is our mission, emanating from our values. On Yom Kippur, we make promises to be better people and to be miracles in our world. Jews have always helped resettle refugees. The prophet writes that we should learn to do good, devote ourselves to justice, aid the wrong, uphold the rights of the orphan, defend the widow, and not ignore when someone else is suffering. We continue the ancient tradition of challenging the status quo here at Sukkot Shalom. And I am proud, and we should all be proud of the work that we already do in our community. In addition to this ongoing work, I look forward to engaging our community in principles of community organizing that have become core to my rabbinate. We listen to each other. We listen to our concerns. We ask each other what keeps us up at night. And then we decide how to use our collective power to make a difference in our world. We might choose to partner with local interfaith community organizing coalitions that create systemic change in local, state communities. I have met with leaders from United Power, a consortium of over 40 faith communities representing Jews, Christians, and Muslim communities to make lasting positive change in Chicagoland, which has continued to be the most segregated big city in the country. Currently, they are working with the city to transfer some of the tens of thousands of vacant city-owned lots to nonprofit developers who will build single-family homes to sell at an affordable rate to those who live on the south side of Chicago. This work strengthens neighborhoods, begins to repair historical harm, and addresses current racial wealth gaps while reducing crime and ultimately creating a stronger Chicago for everyone. I've already begun exploring with our social justice team how we can integrate community organizing into the fabric of Sukkot Shalom while we continue our indispensable direct service work. Last month, Laura Meckler, education writer for the Washington Post and Shaker Heights alum, published a book entitled Dreamtown, Shaker Heights and the Quest for Racial Equity. She examines the reasons for Shaker's ongoing racial academic achievement gap and ways in which the district is working and continues to work over and over to achieve academic excellence for all students. Her book celebrates the fact that while far from perfect, the community of teachers, administrators, and parents continue to seek innovative ways to meet this goal. She notes that Shaker Heights offers lessons for places and people who want to do better. Growing up in Shaker, these lessons became foundational experience as I watched previous generations challenge the status quo, and has become a major reason of why social justice is such a core part of my rabbinate. Our ancestors taught us these same lessons in the Torah to love and care for our neighbors and strangers. And the Sukkot Shalom community has been dedicated to establishing equity and belonging into our world since its founding. Tonight on Kol Nidre, we celebrate all that we have accomplished, and we challenge ourselves to do better and to be better in the years and the weeks to come. I pray that none of us ever walks into a building again that has white doors or black doors, Jewish doors or queer doors, refugee doors, or any doors of inequality. I pray that we get to live in a world where we all choose to hold the doors open for one another. Gamar Chatima Tova, through the works of our hands, may we all be written for blessing in the book of life.